Morena, everybody. I'm going to commence our meeting. Welcome, everybody. Ngā mihi o te ahura, kia koutou o tēnei, ki te whakanui e te kaupapa nui, tēnā koutou katoa. I'm Councillor Penny Gaylor, and I'm the Chair of the Environment Committee. Welcome to those who've joined us for the first time today. Look forward to hearing from you. Welcome, colleagues, and I just wanted to begin with a karakia. Whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga, kia mā kina kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai, he hiaki ana te ata kura, he tio, he hoka, he hei hu, te hei mauri ora. Thank you. So I'm just going to check in with apologies today. We have an apology from Councillor Ponta for absence and Councillor Saw for early departure. Could someone move and second those, please? Councillor Nash, Councillor Cookburn second. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against? Thank you. It's passed. Any conflict of interest declarations? No. Excellent. So now we'll, just before I go into public participation, having opened our meeting and done a couple of admin things, I just want to do a couple of add-ons to our morning with firstly, Councillor Wolfe wanted to give you the opportunity to say and acknowledge the passing of Nicholas Boyack. So if I could put it over to you, please.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. It's with a great deal of sadness that I pay tribute to Nicholas Boyack, who was a journalist on the on staff and with the Hut News. In fact, I'm honoured to pay tribute. I'm really gutted at the sudden passing of Nicholas. He was an absolute champion for our environment. Many of us around the table and wider, and I would like to acknowledge the wonderful tribute that our officers paid Nicholas in this morning's stuff, and the Hutt City Council with lowering their flags to half-mast on Monday. I see that as being unprecedented for any journalist. Nicholas was a brave. He had integrity. He researched his stories absolutely in a balanced type of way, and he treated people with respect and dignity with everything that he did. And from a personal perspective, I had a 20-year association plus with Nicholas, and I absolutely trusted him to do the right thing, and he always did. He loved the environment. He just advocated for so many different areas, and particularly rare and endangered species. He was a champion for our community, and I know that Ken, you had a lot to do with him. Quentin also, and David, I'm sure that you did as well. He's going to be greatly missed. It's a huge void when you have somebody of Nicholas's ilk that passes away, so suddenly. So I just thought that it was opportune to mark his passing, just with the greatest deal of respect and high regard. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wolfe, and we give thanks to a man who actually served his environment. Thank you. Yeah. Now, if I could ask Nigel to also give a different kind of thoughts and comments in this moment. Thank you.
Kia ora, Chair. Given it's still fresh in everyone's mind, I just want to acknowledge the Hiko Mai Te Tiriti on Tuesday. And in particular, I wanted to recognise the fact that it not only was a significant and unprecedented event for the country, but certainly for Wellington City and all the work that was done. And I wanted to acknowledge the huge efforts of our Metlink team and our Metlink operators, both rail, bus and ferry. The volume of people going across all our Metlink services was absolutely phenomenal, and the way in which it was handled and the feedback we've got was just enormously powerful. So I want to thank all the Metlink team, many who were up at 4 o'clock in the morning, along with the people going on the Hikoi to make sure that network worked really effectively. Also want to acknowledge the parks team, people occupying spaces or camping in spaces and managing our open space network was also done extremely well, as was our media and comms approach. So I just really wanted to acknowledge that. It's a significant achievement to have done that so effectively and so well. And I also want to thank the councillors, because a number of you actually not only went on the hikoi, but you actually had a lot of media and comms yourselves. So I want to acknowledge the team response from the Regional Council on what was a massive day, and Metlink and the broader GW network really knocked it out of the park in my reckoning. So thank you, just acknowledging that, and thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you, Nigel. And I just wonder if Councillor Nash want to make a comment too.
Yes, kia ora koutou katoa. And yeah, just to say thanks to all the workers. I know that lots of the workers, bus drivers and people on the trains would have preferred to be on the hikoi themselves, but they pulled a big shift, came in and moved more people in one day on the public transport network in Wellington than we have ever done in the history, in the recorded history of the Metlink network. So there were about 165,000 passenger trips in one day. That's quite remarkable. It's a 30% uplift on our busiest day ever. So really big. And yeah, nice to see the ferry. It was very busy as well. The Cross Harbour ferry had more than double its normal patronage as well. So yeah, everyone chipped in, and yeah, just a great vibe around town and on the public transport network. When it's so busy, you can often have tension, and I'm sure there was some tension at some points on some services and carriages, but generally speaking, it was a hugely positive set of feedback that I've been getting. So yeah, big thanks to the workers and everybody who did all the planning to get us through.
Yes, bravo. Thank you. Thanks very much for those comments. So perhaps if Nigel, you could pass on to the Metlink team and the Parks team. And I mean, it's just here we are as a democratic organisation ourselves, supporting our country's democratic rights to speak their voice. So wonderful. Thank you. So let's get back to our Environment Committee agenda for the day. So first up, we have public participation, and we have some guests who are students in Wellington. I was going to say Otaki, Wellington. So if you would like to come up here to this table here, we can add some chairs, and maybe we even, I don't know if we can't really put in a second microphone there. So just.
Are you happy just to stand?
Yes, no, that's good. Perhaps because we live stream and we have a number of councillors online, just perhaps just shuffle that. Yeah, that's right, and you can adjust that microphone so they'll let us know if they can't hear you properly. So shall I leave it for you to do the introductions? That would be wonderful. And welcome. Thank you for coming.
Kia ora. Yes, it's on. That's good. We thought a good way to end the year was to introduce the voice. Well, not introduce. Have the voice of rangatahi at the final meeting for the year. So I'm really pleased to introduce Lucy, Maya, Santino, Isabella and Jemima to speak to you today. They've all been working with the Enviro Schools community facilitators in some shape or form during the year as they've had student leadership roles, and we've asked them to talk a little bit about projects that they've worked on, achievements and challenges, and to sort of answer a bit of a broad question around what can we do today that future generations will thank us for. So I will pass straight over to Lucy and Maya to speak first. Kia ora.
Kia ora koutou. I'm Lucy.
And I'm Maya.
And this year we've been the environmental prefects at Wellington East Girls College. We've been working on a few environmental initiatives this year, and one of our main goals was to make active transport more accessible to people at our school.
To do this, we have restored a link track connecting Wellington East Girls College to main Mountfort commuter trails, enabling sustainable commutes from the eastern suburbs. With help from the Wellington City Council, Matarangi Trail Builders, and the Bloomberg Initiative for Cycling Infrastructure, and the WGC Environmental Committee. We also ran word sessions, mountain biking sessions, for students looking to build confidence with biking to school. And we also planted 500 native plants in the Matarangi area.
We've also, one of our big jobs was working on the composting and recycling systems at our school. So we got some bins gifted by the Wellington City Council to help us with that, which was very good. And yes. And so what we thought with some things that we wanted to work on, or things we found a bit hard, was that not everyone, like, without encouragement of active transport, we found that not everyone can like bike to school realistically over like, or every day, like, and the next best thing to this is public transport. And but as we've seen in like the past few months with like the new government and stuff, the increased the fare costs are a lot, and it's becoming unaffordable for people to use public transport. And so we want to be able to, we think that it's really important that we need to support people to use public transport by lowering fare costs. Yeah.
And when we did our school-wide transport survey, that was one of the biggest barriers for students to use public transport was the cost. So, yeah.
We also think there should be a baseline for waste management systems, as currently a lot of us put a lot of our energy into just starting up composting systems, which the next year has to like reinstate. So it's a lot of work behind the computer, lots of emails, etc., just to like sort out getting bins or something, which seems like we should just get them like right now. Yeah. Exactly. And
another barrier we've kind of faced is finding a way to connect and communicate with tangata whenua with a lot of the projects we've been doing.
Yeah, for example, we restored a link track, as we mentioned, connecting our school to the Mount Vic commuter trails, and we want to get an ingoa for this track, which like connects with the mana whenua of the area, like Te Aotearoa and Taranaki whānui. However, we haven't been able to get in contact with them too much, and we think that we know it's super important to be able to honour and work with mana whenua, especially in this space where we work on the whenua and have environmental initiatives, which we know.
And I guess like generally with all our projects, having like interactions with mana whenua and tangata whenua would be really appreciated, and
really beneficial to future generations.
Yeah.
So that's what we have to say. Thank you all. Ngā mihi nui.
Kia ora, ingna hau e whā ko tai mai nei tēnei rā. He mihi nui ki e koutou katoa ko hui mai I rungi te kaupapa o te rā. Ko ai au, ko Santino Tuku Ingoa. This year I am a Pacifica captain at my school. I do a lot of work with local MPs to engage our Pacifica akunga with their political roots. I help them just feel comfortable at school. Aside from that, I am a Kapiti Coast Youth Councillor. I am the secretary. I take all the minutes. I know all the haps. I know what goes on. I link between schools, between council, between outside organisations. And I would say I am the de facto rangatahi lead of the MARA, of the composting, of the recycling at my school. I do a lot of work, particularly in the MARA, that's where I see a lot of my contribution. I am a firm believer in the power of individual actions. I see a lot of impact of not only my own, but my friends, of my cohort as a general, just like the things that we can do as individuals that have a much larger impact. So I've been involved in the MARA since year 9, so ongoing 4 years at this point. I've been working just after school whenever I can, however I can, and due to that we have gotten approximately 20k in funding from local council, from my school board, to do their first ever composting at my school. It's an exciting time for us. We are engaged with Pariaka, as Kapiti College is the only school outside Taranaki to have that connection with Pariaka, and so we follow a lot of their tikanga, with their maiai, with their values. And so I believe it's been a long journey, but it's been a good one, and I've overcome a lot of like challenges, such as who to talk to about what, when, and timing. It's been a big part of it. As a leader, I do try to engage with my community as much as possible. I pull in people that I know are interested, people who I think would be interested, but they have no chance to, they have no access to. And I believe that having a mahara at a marae is deeply personal to both me and other students at my college. This connection is something that they might not always have that access to, and so I believe by building those foundational skills now, we enable them to go forward in their lives with these skills to continue these practices in their own lives, in their own communities. When they go forward to these seats right now, I believe there's a lot of power in community and community action. This year I organised or helped organise the Kapiti Environmental Youth Summit, where we collected everyone in Kapiti who has an idea, who has a voice, and we enable them to learn about politics, to just engage with, as a youth council and KCDC, but with each other and connect and form that bond. And again, I cannot reiterate how important it is to have rangatahi voice and rangatahi Māori and rangatahi Pacifica, tangata moana, in the rooms where our land is overcome by climate change, by political action that is changing our whenua, often for the worse. And I do believe that you have the power in these seats to advocate for those people, to advocate for those who cannot stand up for themselves, to be the ones who, again, have that power. You are in these seats for a reason. I do believe it is our, not only yours, but our position to be here to advocate, just to keep on fighting for those people who do not know that they can fight, who do not have the power or the reason to fight. And I do believe it's just our right to inspire rather than shame, to just make sure that they know they're heard, that they know that they're important. I just believe it's an ongoing fight that will continue to go on beyond my time, beyond our time, beyond your time. And I do believe that one day we will find a place where we can all meet together harmonically, where we can all just have that conversation and get meaningful outgate and get meaningful outcomes from it. He mihi nui kia koutou katoa.
Good morning, everyone. My name's Isabella. I'm from Samuel Marsden Collegiate School, and I'm the co-head of Roots and Shoots in the environmental committee there. I started my environmental journey in primary school by joining the environmental committee there called Green Streamers. Here I learned about recycling, gardening, composting, worm farming, and the waterways. I also started to learn here about single-use products and what I can do to make myself more sustainable. Moving into intermediate, I also joined the environmental group there. Here is where we cleaned the stream of weeds and rubbish to help the local ecosystem to flourish and thrive, so as there would be less in the stream to prohibit it. Now that I'm in high school, I have become more conscious of the waste that I am producing, so I have started to make the switch to products that are environmentally friendly and sustainable. As an example, I went from going in hair products that were in plastic bottles to ones that are in bar form. This year, I became the co-head of Roots and Shoots and the environmental committee. Although we are a small group, our goal was to tend to the school garden, where we maintained the native area of the garden and produced food which went to the free store. These opportunities that I've had over the years have given me the tools and knowledge on how to protect the environment that surrounds us and how to lower my impact on it. Some of the challenges that we have faced this year is the lack of interest towards our group. As when I said we were a small group, I meant it. There were only 2 of us majority of the time, which was myself and my co-head Charlotte. Something that would be good to drum up interest on the environmental groups is the education of sustainability and the environmental awareness, which brings me to the question of what can we do that future generations will thank us for? As when we lack the information, which can lead us to be uninformed and ignorant of the impacts that we make on the environment. So if there is an increase of education in primary school and intermediate, there will be a mutual understanding of what is needed to help bring back the appreciation for the environment. The future generations will thank us for this, as in the long run, it will not only save them money from switching over to the more sustainable products, but it will also help the living things around us. As we know, conservation of animals that are endangered and that are of a less fortunate standing, so the native animals of New Zealand and the plants that are around us, they will thank us for that because they'll be able to appreciate what we are appreciating now. Thank you.
Tēnā koutou katoa, ngā mihi nui kia koutou. Ko te kaupapa o tēnei rā he mea nui. E rau rangatira mātutu te whenua a whakatūrongo te tangata. Ko te ati awa te iwi, no tāna ki a hau, ko hato ora nā te kura, ko Jamapa Tito Toka Ingoa. I'm 16 years old and I attend St. Lawrence College in the Hut. I hold numerous positions in my kura and in my community, such as student board representative, which I was very lucky to get this year. I'm very proud of that. And where I represent not only our rangatahi Māori, but neurodiverse whānau, as I have dyscalculia, which is very challenging, but I'm trying to make it easier for everyone who struggles with things like that, and things like ADHD and dyslexia, because it's not easy, and we need more support in our kura for people like that. I'm also head of School Strike for Climate for 2025, and I don't know if you guys saw the march this year. It was pretty big. We had it was a huge labour of love. It took us 6 months to plan, and I've never been more grateful for the group of people that I was blessed with to work with this year and for next year. I truly believe that they will all be change makers in their community. We had 4,000 people walk with us to Parliament, and we also appreciate the work that the council did with us for that. My connection to the environment and my love for it is not new, as I am mana whenua. And land, I believe, is an extension of not only ourselves, but of our ancestors and the legacy that they hold. It is our responsibility, not only as mana whenua, but as tau iwi, to protect it, to nurture it, and to make sure that it can be continued for our mokopuna to enjoy. Hence my involvement in the above. My kura, as of currently, has an awesome composting system and uses no harmful chemical solutions in the soil, creating a perfect ecosystem not only for our plants, but for our insects and our people too. It's not really me I'm here to talk about today. I'm here with these other incredible leaders in their community to tell you how important the voice of a rangatahi is. Because as you've seen, everything that they have done is making huge impacts and waves in their communities and their kura. And that is powerful, and I think that's something that needs to be more widely appreciated. It starts with this kura and with this council putting in the mahi to create reciprocal relationships with young people. Because if you take and take and take and you don't give back, those relationships are not going to flourish, they're not going to be nurtured, and they're not going to thrive, like how our mara and how our environment should be. We're here to tell you that our chance at a healthy and thriving future is not supposed to be a pipe dream, it is our human right, as it is written in many documents across the world. The benefits that not only you, but everyone in the community and the wider country will enjoy from creating meaningful relationships with rangatahi are innumerable. They will see that those in positions of power and influence actually do want to connect with them, and that it is worth their time. You'll start seeing more people in public service and in civics education. And these relationships and this mahi will always be creating and sustaining and nurturing. So thank you.
Amazing. Yeah. That was amazing. Thank you. I'm just going to invite, has anybody got any questions? No, it was pretty. Councillor Lee?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Kia tātou. I know all the schools have various composting schemes, but do you think it's achievable to go zero food waste to landfill? I know countries have done it countrywide, but do you think your school could put in place a program to go zero food waste to landfill?
Yeah. I think that oh, whoops. Oh. Okay. I think that that is. I think definitely yes, but for saying, do you think your school like? I think it'll be best to have something set up so that all the schools are doing it. Because if it's just one school, then how is like everyone else gonna follow along?
It always starts from one.
Oh, always starts with
It
one.
always starts from one, and it sounds like a big task.
Yeah.
It's a small step, but it's a huge task. Separating food waste from your waste stream and composting, because it sounds like all your schools already have composting scheme. But I can guarantee you a lot of food waste goes into the bin and goes off to landfill. But it is about separating that waste, that food waste, to go into compost and never leave the school. So do you think that I'm sure it's achievable, but I'll probably start from one school and then share that intellectual property.
Thank you. And Councillor Saw online his question, and then I do. Thank you.
Cool. Morena tatou. Thank you so much all for coming in and sharing your whakaaro with us. It's always a super nerve-wracking thing to come and address a council chamber, so just want to acknowledge that you all stepped up and spoke beautifully about all the initiatives and projects that you're part of. I was just wondering whether any of you had ever written a submission or been involved in any of our public consultation at council, and if you would like to, how might we be able to support you to do that? Because that's one quite effective way of having your voice heard and shifting the dial as well. So I don't know who wants to take that question, but yeah, just curious to know about that.
Sure. Okay. Kia ora anō. Obviously, I've submitted to KCDC, but I've also submitted to Wellington Council, obviously recently with Toitu Tiriti. Not sure that's the kaupapa here, but I still believe that you have the power to advocate for that bill being like gone no further. Again, kill that bill. I'm not the place or time, but um, I'm not fully sure of the role KCDC flows into here, but I do believe that you should listen to your local councils and you should engage with what they hear from their communities, as like they are your constituents, they are your people who, your people again. We submit, I'm pretty sure we all have in the past at least one time, and I'm sure there are examples, but just reach out to your councils, reach out to even schools. I reckon there are people who do not feel comfortable submitting to like a local government, they do not feel that trust, they do not feel that safety. So I reckon there's a chance for people to submit to their schools this year, and you guys reach out individually to them. I'm not sure that's the question, but anything else I should mention? I don't know.
You could always just email us. Just a thought. I think that
I will find your email.
personally, I think going into places where young people are prevalent, not talking about like just walking around the mall or something, going into schools could be really beneficial, showing people that the council is accessible and that they're accountable. Because I've found that I live in the hut, so I talk to mostly the Hut City Council, and they've been incredibly helpful when we go to them, but I think sometimes there needs to be a little bit more reciprocation. There needs to be more of a cyclical relationship. So going into schools, asking them what they really think, and asking for public consultation in schools, I think that would be a fantastic idea.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. I just had some questions and perhaps reflections, and thank you so much for coming in and sharing that with us, because what's really useful is like often it's kind of a bit of the gobbledygook, no disrespect, but to actually hear what people are doing out there in their communities is really powerful for us. And I would sort of also advise, as Councillor Saul mentioned about submissions, whether it be to local government or to government and the select committee processes, the kind of experience that you've shared and that you understand and have been doing is really powerful in amongst those kind of submissions. So I kind of encourage that and applaud. And I'm wondering about, obviously your various CVs that you'll be writing up for your futures beyond school. I'm sure you'll be putting in their project management skills, because you've all really done very well there, and obviously leadership skills. And when you think about leadership, that's not just opportunities around this kind of political table, but I look to Leanne here, who has how many staff? 400 staff, and environmental staff in our organisation. So the GM of environment for the Greater Wellington Regional Council, these are the kind of other leadership roles, and all these people in here are leadership in our organisation who are tasked with focusing on our environment or public transport, as you've mentioned. So thank you so much for coming. I'd love to go on, but I won't, because So Santino, I've attended the Kapiti Coast Youth Council in previous years, was the KCDC representative on it. That's another really good, powerful tool that the KCDC has, and it's been very successful, because my reflections over many years of observing submissions from the Youth Council, like yourselves today, they were the best presenters. They had wisdom beyond their years and honest, respectful reflections. And again, that was what we heard today. So thank you so much. And thank you for all the work you're doing. And I just hope that that's perhaps shaping what your choices are beyond school. And, I'm sure they will. So thank you so much. Really appreciate you coming in and spending time with us today. Thank you. Thank you. Kia ora. Oh, that's pretty cool. Pretty cool. Okay, so back to the agenda business, and just noting we're on a particular schedule today with regard to the FRAC committee starts at 1 o'clock, doesn't it? So we want to be finishing this agenda and then moving on to some workshop items, and then a little bit of the break in between. So if I'm having to guide us around lengthy question time, let's not do that. Okay? Well, you know what I mean. Let's just, be focused in our questions. That's the challenge today. So, confirmation of minutes from the 17th of October, because of course we're nearly at the end of November. That's frightening. So, Councillor Bassett moved, Councillor Cookbanane second. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, the motion is carried. Thank you. Farming Reference Group Chair's Report Update. Thank you very much, Barbie. We will take that as read. And I'm just wondering, are there any questions around the table? Or online, of course? Anything you all good to? Yep, that was great. Another 2 and a bit pages. We appreciate that. And we have another meeting before the end of the year coming up, don't we? No, we don't. February's. Great, I'm hosting. Am I cooking? Oh, okay. Okay, I better work on my scones over summer. Thank you. Thank you very much. So on to item number 6, Annual Asset Management Condition Report. George. Hello. Oh, well, hobble up. Yep. Hello, how you doing?
Kia ora.
Good.
Let me get set up.
Right, shall I just, we've got some recommendations there, so we'll just, how do you want to run it? Do you want to take it as read? Anything you want to raise with us before we consider questions and then move to recommendations?
Kia ora koutou katoa, ko George tōku ingoa. Hei kaitiaki a tīma Assets and Performance ahau. So I'll take the paper and the associated attachments as read, but I do have a presentation I'd like to walk the committee through. It'll take about 15 minutes or so, and then there'll be 10 minutes at the end if needed for any discussions. I've got Hamish Fennick here, who's Team Lead of Operations, in case there's any Cody questions which I can't answer. Just give me 2 seconds to get set up. Oh, it's okay. Okay, let's put it up. Cool. Okay. So the purpose of the report is to present to the committee the current state of the major flood protection and erosion control infrastructure across the region, and we're seeking agreement from the committee that it is satisfied that the infrastructure has been maintained satisfactorily. So this agreement or the decision by the committee fulfills one of Council's non-financial performance measures as presented on the screen. And we record progress on this measure throughout the year by reporting on the current state and performance of the major flood protection schemes across the region. through annual reports to various committees, and it typically includes a summary of current challenges, progress, asset condition and performance, and then our highest asset risks and the remediation planned. So, as you know, the Environment Committee has the overall responsibility to oversee the regional resilience priorities in the delivery of plans, programmes and activities for flood protection and control, and therefore the maintenance and improvements of these assets. However, I also believe that the committee relies on feedback from various other committees that flood and erosion infrastructure has been maintained satisfactorily in their areas. And so we've reported progress on this measure in the form of annual reports to those committees on the screen. So on the 6th of August, the Wairarapa Committee met to consider our annual report and unanimously confirmed that it was satisfied that the flood and erosion infrastructure in the Wairarapa is being maintained. However, it did request in the next report that information is included on the different asset types and their condition, which you will find in Appendix 1 of this report, and we will continue to do so on an ongoing basis. Te Awa Kairangi Hutt Valley Subcommittee also met on the 6th of August to consider our report. However, the paper was withdrawn following requests from the committee to provide further information. So our team went away, we collated that information. After sitting down with Councillor Duthie to run through that, we then revised the report and the committee considered that on the 22nd of October, and that was unanimously agreed that the flood and erosion infrastructure has been maintained satisfactorily. And then both the Waikanai and the Otaki Friends groups received our annual asset management report on the 4th of September and the 23rd of October, respectively, and both moved the motion that they are satisfied that the flood and erosion infrastructure in those areas are being maintained. Which brings us to the decision in front of the committee today, which is the last one of the year, and where we're seeking for you to agree that the flood and erosion infrastructure across the region has been maintained. So, what exactly is major flood protection and erosion control structures? The Local Government Act defines major flood protection and control works as whether they meet two or more of the following four criteria. So, operating expenditure of more than 250,000 in any 1 year, capital expenditure of more than 1 million in any 1 year, scheme asset replacement value of more than 10 million, and or directly benefiting a population of 5,000 or more. So based on that criteria, we've got 15 schemes across the region, which are classed as major flood protection and control works or schemes, and therefore they are included within the scope of this report. So earlier this year, some new legislation passed into effect in May, some building dam safety regulations, which require dam owners, which GW is, to collate comprehensive information on their dams and ensure that the surveillance and maintenance is happening. And there's been certain deadlines that we need to meet to submit documentation to the regulator, which is also GW. I won't go through that table, but it just provides information on various documents that need to be submitted and the timeframes. So in terms of GW, we've got 8 dams that are managed within the environment group, and there's some information there on the height and volumes. That's important because those thresholds dictate whether a dam is classifiable or not. And so if a dam is more than 4 meters in height and stores more than 20,000 meters cubed of water or other fluid, it is considered classifiable, and it's those classifiable dams which come under the regulations. And so out of those 8 dams in Te Ropu Taiao, there's 4 which are classifiable, which is Setanosta, Stebbings, the Barrage Gates in the Wairarapa, and Birchfield Dam. And so out of those, only the high-pick dams are required to submit a dam safety assurance program to the regulator by 13th of August next year. We've already submitted the potential impact classification, which was required in August this year for those high-pick dams. Okay, so over the next few slides, I just wanted to talk to the committee on our asset performance framework that we use to assess the current state of our schemes. It's going to be a little repetitive for those committee members that were at any of those last meetings, but it'll be beneficial for those who weren't. So back in 2017, GW adopted a national framework for assessing the performance of flood protection assets. It was originally developed by the National River Managers Special Interest Group in 2015. And then in 2017, they engaged a consultant to develop a tool which will allow us to apply the code of practice to major flood protection schemes. The tool is where you store the data for the assessment, it does the calculations, and it gives you the outputs for the assessment. So I think the River Managers Group wanted a consistent way to assess performance of schemes across the country, so we could benchmark against each other, and presumably so they can put forward bids to central government for funding. So it's a risk-based tool, so we're looking at the probability of a group of assets failing and the consequences of those assets failing. The consequences scored singularly from 1 insignificant to 5 catastrophic, and then the probability of failure is broken down into 3 more performance criteria. So we look at the capacity of the channel to convey design flood flows, the intrinsic strength of any stop banks that are present, and then what is the condition of all the other infrastructure in that area. And so once you've got those scores for probability and consequence, you obtain a risk score from very low to very high. So for a bit more perspective, the scale that we do these assessments at are at our cross-section level, which are those orange lines running perpendicular to the river there. They're spaced out every 100 to 200 metres in our urban areas, up to 500 or so metres in our rural areas. So between each of those cross sections, we'll assess what's the probability of that stop bank failing because of its capacity, what's the probability of that 100-metre stop bank failing because of its intrinsic strength, and then what's the probability of that 100-metre reach failing because of the condition of the other assets present. So it might be a rock line, willows, berm, stop bank, culvert, so on. Whatever assets are there, you put the condition into the tool and it calculates an overall condition for that reach. And then similarly for consequence, what's the consequence of that 100-metre reach failing from the design flood event? So once we put that data in, we obtain a risk score from very low to very high, which we then can attribute to that reach. We can also do both banks, and then ultimately we end up with a risk profile for our scheme, which we can then put onto a lovely map like that, which has lots of different benefits. It's allowed us to communicate risk more effectively to our stakeholders like yourselves or community groups or our operations team, for example. Helps us prioritise our work programmes. Obviously, if we come across any defects or poor condition assets in those higher risk areas, we're going to be prioritising those ahead of those other assets in those lower risk areas. It helps us to identify failure mode. So what's actually causing that high risk? Is it because there's not enough capacity in the channel, or is it because there's a poor stop bank, and so on? Helps us identify our critical assets by focusing on those higher consequence areas. And lastly, it also helps us identify where we don't actually have the information. If we don't have the data to put into the assessment and it's in a critical area, then we can prioritise the investigations to get that data and put it in the assessment. Cool, so that's the framework. So now I'll just touch on some of the information in the report. We start off high level. This is a summary of condition by year for the last 3 years. You've got 2024 on the far right there. And then on the horizontal rows, we've got the different condition grades. So the count there represents how many assets are there in very good condition in that year, how many assets are in poor condition, and so on. And then we've got a little ratio there for you. So what's the proportion of assets in very good to moderate versus poor to very poor. So we can see that there has been a subtle decline in asset condition since last year. If you look at the number of poor condition assets, you can see that they have increased. However, proportionally, 87% of assets are in very good to moderate condition, which is still a high standard. And then we have a graph equivalent off that same table, just in case any of the committee are more visual. It's the same information. So you've got your 22, 23 and 24 years, and then the different colours represent the different condition grades. So you'll probably see that this year there's been a higher number of inspections done. And that's because of a couple of reasons. Last year we reported we had some technical issues as we migrated our data to our new asset management information system, and we just didn't get all the assets mapped in time for summer. And so we couldn't do those inspections, but that was rectified this year, and we inspected every asset. And then we've also constructed new assets this year, so those two factors contribute to the higher number of assets inspected. And then we start to focus on just 2024 alone. So this is just a high-level summary of the different condition grades. So we can see that we've got 127 assets in very poor condition. So that's 2% of the total. And then we've got 751 assets in poor condition, which is 11%. Which begs the question, what assets are they that are in poor condition? So then we reference Appendix A, or Attachment A, which provides a summary of condition by asset type. We've included a regional summary, and then we've provided a summary by area, so Kapiti Hut and the Wairarapa. So that should fulfill that request from the Wairarapa committee that we're looking for this information. So, if you're interested in a particular asset type, you can scan down that table, find it, and then have a look at what the current state is. Or if you would rather just see what the very poor assets are, you can go to that column and have a look, and you'll see that the majority of them are debris fences or vegetative assets or some rock grinds. But what does stick out for me, and maybe for you guys too, is that there are 300 stock bank assets in poor or very poor condition, which is quite significant. It's nearly a third of all stock banks. So that's when the report then drills down into what we consider are more significant asset types. So your culverts, floodgates, floodwalls and stock banks and so on. So it shows that the total number across the region, and then how many of them are poor and very poor, and then some commentary around the most common issues. So obviously we do have some assets across those significant asset types that are in poor and very poor condition that we need to sort out. But the ones that stick out is that stock bank at the bottom row there. 288 assets in poor condition and 5 in very poor. And the reality is we take quite a conservative approach in GW for stock bank assets, particularly any trees or invasive roots in or within close proximity to the stock banks. The trouble is there's no clear guidance or standard available on what makes a poor condition asset for trees near stock banks. Definitely trees in stock banks, but it's that proximity and the type of tree. And so before the inspections this year, we refined the methodology to assign a poor score whether there was a tree or invasive roots within 5 meters of the stock bank toe, so where the stock bank meets the ground either side, which is actually a significant area, and that's led to a significant increase in poor condition stock bank assets. We have further refined the methodology this year, so ahead of the inspections coming up this summer, we've added more criteria such as, is the tree over 5 meters? What's the condition of the tree? Is it isolated? Is it in a cluster? Is it within 3 meters? Is it in the stock bank? So hopefully this year coming we'll have some more accurate assessments. And lastly, in February after Christmas, we're looking to engage some consultants to come in and present to our operations team specifically on trees and invasive roots adjacent to stock banks, and what do we need to consider is and isn't poor condition. So I'm confident we'll have some more accurate assessments. So at GW, we take a risk-based approach to maintaining our assets. So you'll be familiar with these maps. We've provided them every year for the last 7 years, but what we've started to do is add our poor condition on top. It's pretty difficult to see on the screen, but there's some small orange dots which represent our poor condition assets, and then there's some red dots which represent very poor. So obviously this allows us to look at those poor condition assets in our higher risk areas and prioritise those over some poor condition assets perhaps in those green, very low risk areas. But if you look through that attachment, which is attachment 2, you'll see that the majority of poor and very poor condition assets actually fall outside of those high risk areas. But the ones that do fall inside those high risk areas, we've tried to show what we're doing this year in attachment 3, which I've got a snip off here, which shows what the condition of the asset is, what risk is that segment, and then what we're planning to do. Aspirationally, we'd like to create an interactive map which would allow the committee just to navigate around the region, click on an asset, and you'll see the condition and what risk and what we're planning to do. We just haven't got there yet, so we'll just continue to provide this information. And attachment 4 will continue to include the asset risk maps. Open to feedback if it's a bit of a duplication of Appendix 2, but I just feel presenting just the risk maps without any annotations quite useful. But yeah, open to feedback there. And as I said, we've got a number of schemes around the region and we have multiple maps for each one. So we end up having about 30 different maps for you guys to have a look at. And then, so this is a similar table to the asset condition one that we looked at, but not to be confused. So this is focusing on risk. So how many segments are there in each of those risk classifications? So what that's telling us, if we look at the bottom row for count, there's 1,758 segments across the region that we assess for risk. So remember, they're 100 to 200 metres in urban areas and up to 500 metres in rural. So what we can tell from that is we've actually seen a very slight improvement in risk compared to last year. We've gone up to 91% of segments in very low to medium risk. And that's reflected by the decrease in the number of high-risk segments from 2023 to 2024, which has gone down by 23. And there's some commentary in the report as to why that's gone down. There are 161 segments, or 9%, that are in high or very high risk this year. And of those, 90% are located on Te Awa Kairangi Hutt River. What's important to note, though, we observed a slight decline in condition in the earlier table, but we've actually observed a slight improvement in risk this year. And so that highlights GW's risk-based approach to asset management. So where we target those poor condition assets in our higher risk areas. And then lastly, Appendix 5, we just list what our highest asset risks are, why are they high risk, and what is our planned remediation for those, which I won't talk to, but if there's questions at the end, we can take those. And then we just circle back to this decision that we're looking for from the committee. That you note the overall proportion of assets are in very good to moderate condition, but there has been a slight decline in condition, but that you agree the major flood protection and erosion control assets have been maintained satisfactorily and any identified priority issues are being addressed through maintenance and improvement work programs. And I guess I just wanted to acknowledge the amount of work that goes into this. This is our team's biggest work program every year, and it doesn't just happen in one part of the year. There's something happening in every quarter, and it spans multiple teams and departments. If it's the knowledge and insights team doing the investigations so we can update the assessments, or the data and the IT team making sure that the systems and tools are working for the guys in the field. The operational team's going out, spending 3 to 4 months a year doing the inspections, and then our team who analyse the data and update the risk assessments and try to provide it in a way that's easy to understand. So I'm proud to sit here and present the current state of the schemes. As someone who's worked for about 60% of the regional councils across New Zealand, I can confidently assure you that we're leading the way in flood risk asset management for flood control and erosion. And the standard of our schemes is setting a high benchmark. So, tēnā koutou katoa.
Thank you very much. So I'll take it to questions. Right, Councillor Kirkman and then Barbie.
Thank you. Within our environmental budgets, we've got quite high reserves there compared to some of the other areas in that. Are they realistic in giving you the opportunity to act before a major event occurs? Can you act in an early stage because of the reserves we hold to make sure that say a stop bank doesn't wash out completely in that? Can you make comment on that, please?
Yeah. Yep. The flood reserves are only there for repairs after an event. So there's two types of reserves. We have just a standard flood reserve, then major flood reserves. And they are triggered by the size of the event. So after a 5-year event, we can access our first budget of reserve, and then after a 25-year event, we can access that, and that's for the earmarked for the recovery of a flood event.
Actually, Leanne's just going to add to that.
Yeah, also just a reminder, Councillor, that we requested more money through the LTP to improve flood assets. So that's what that's for, so that we can keep improving our level of service.
Thank you. Barbie?
Yeah, just a quick question. The number of assets that has gone up in that register, mostly aligned to the Wairarapa. Is that because you've been, I've had a brief discussion with Adrian, but that you've been identifying more areas around willows and things that are causing issues in the rivers? Does that mean that that's moved more things into the poor because they're new in the system and they've come into poor? I couldn't quite figure my way through the graphs and things you'd presented, but is that where that increase is and part of the reason why the poor has gone up?
That's one component of it, but also the number of stop bank assets in poor condition has increased because of that refined methodology of, is there a tree or invasive roots within 5 metres? But also, yeah, we do capture new assets each year that weren't on the system, and so we add those in, and they may be 10, 20 years old, and so they're not in the best condition. So that also contributes to it.
I can add that as well. So there are new assets, well, not new assets, old assets that are uncovered through flood events as well. A lot of them are debris fences or historic assets. They'll most often be reported as very poor condition because they, in effect, are actually redundant. So part of the review exercise after we've done our condition rating is to identify those assets and either repair them if they're required or remove them from our asset data system as well.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Lee?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know being in the risk management space, you're always the fun guy at the party because I used to hold a portfolio in a previous life. Do you believe that the risk profile has actually changed significantly given, well, the climate obviously changing, but do you think that has had a huge impact on the risk profile? Because we are experiencing far more extreme weather events and more frequent, and our assets aren't actually fit for purpose. Is that why the risk profile has changed?
Yeah, again, that's one component. Sometimes it's the assets have deteriorated, and so that contributes to the risk. But yet we in our capacity assessments, which is one component, our knowledge and insights team update their models every 5 to 10 years, and so we're seeing more of those climate risks coming in. So yeah, that's having an effect on the risk profile.
Thank you.
And then one last question. I think in the pie chart, I can't find it now. It shows the very high or very poor assets as 2%. Is that giving a false sense of security? Because if you look at, I think the highest area, risk area is, or exposure area is the CBD area of Hutt Valley, and there are areas or certain parts of the stock bank which is very, very poor, but all you need is one failure of that weak link, and the largest asset of Hutt Valley is exposed. So is that a...
Yeah, in that pie chart alone, but I think attachment 2, which shows those poor condition assets in those high risk areas, kind of covers that. I think what we could do going forward is maybe present how many assets in those critical areas are in those different condition grades, and that would probably give a better picture for what you're asking, I think.
And that's why we're probably pushing hard to get Riverlink finished.
Thank you. Councillor Nash and Councillor Staples, and then we'll conclude.
Cool, thanks. Just para 13 of the report, just looking at nature-based solutions, and you're saying the report says this approach necessitates a different maintenance approach requiring increased management of pest plants and pest animals, which ultimately comes with additional costs. So I was just wondering if we could get some information on how, what scale are you talking about when you talk about additional costs? Are you talking about immediate OPEX for, say, a 12-month period, or are you talking about whole-of-life costs? If you've got something set up as a nature-based solution, it might actually have lower whole-of-life costs than a hard infrastructure response, and also other co-benefits of those nature-based solutions being taken into account when you consider the value for money of those additional costs. So co-benefits could include biodiversity, carbon sequestration, etc., etc. So thanks.
Yes, so I guess with the nature-based solutions, it does provide a lot more benefits to the environment in terms of biodiversity, and that's something we're always considering in the work that we're doing. The costs to put in hard infrastructure are very large, and then to maintain them are large as well, although less frequent. And that depends on the level of level of service that they're designed to as well. When it comes to vegetation protection, we're starting to gather information and research the difference between willow and native and how effective they are. At the moment, we think they're possibly around cost neutral. The cost of putting willows into the berm and then is higher, but the maintenance throughout that period, their lifespan is lower than the natives. But natives, they have a larger upfront maintenance cost in terms of pest. They take longer to establish. So, but we believe that they will have a longer lifespan than the willows. So at the moment, we're still estimating it's pretty cost neutral. But as we start going down this route, we'll start gathering information and be assessing that.
So if it were cost neutral, but the co-benefits were substantial on the nature-based native planting side, then that should be a relatively easy decision for us.
To a certain extent, yes, but we also need to consider those risk profiles and what the consequences. So areas where there's not a lot of berm length between the stock bank, we would be looking for.
Last question from Councillor Staples, thanks. Oh dear. So, Adrian, you're doing that thing, that fancy talking thing, like a chipmunk. So, Adrian will take the. Yeah, so we'll do that question offline with you from that. I know. It's very. I don't think it's ever happened in a committee meeting. Usually it's Okay. So can I please have somebody to move and second the recommendations? Looking for Councillor Bassett, then Councillor Laban. So any.
I'm back, Madam Chair. Could I ask my question, please?
Go.
I'm sorry.
Now frozen?
No.
Oh, okay. Ask away.
Thank you. I'm really sorry about that. My question relates to paragraph 15 of the report around our consent making it difficult for us to do the work that's required. And so I'd just like some clarification around this, please, because if it means that our consent conditions are putting some of our major assets at risk, for instance, if a stock bank gave way and hospital was flooded, it's going to be a pretty difficult position that we're in. So could I just seek some clarification around exactly what that paragraph means, please?
So we've got a reasonably new consent in the Te Awa Kairangi. The conditions in that consent, there's quite a large framework with how it's made up. So there are certain activities that we do in the river that require a site-specific environmental effects plan that needs to be submitted to EREG and then approved by EREG before we can undertake that work. There's quite a lot of resource that goes into producing the SSEMPs, starting from the operations team actually planning out and identifying the activities that will require that. So a lot more forward planning, and I think that's actually a positive. for our work. To actually produce the SSCMP, we have been relying on consultants to input into the SSCMP, ecologists and planners, as well as our own staff. Once the SSCMP is approved and we actually start undertaking the work, there are conditions that we need to meet around monitoring, which involves clarity of the river from the work that we're undertaking, pre and post monitoring for fish, birds, and other environmental factors. So these are all things that have come in on top of the work that we had to do previously. We've identified that this is an issue, and through the LTP, we asked for more resource to be able to undertake this work. It's a good consent. It helps us protect the environment even further, but it does have a cost implication and a resource implication as well.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and again, my apologies.
It's not your fault, is it? Yeah. Thank you very much. So I'll go back to the recommendations. We have moved by Councillor Bassett, seconded by Councillor Laban. No more comments or any comments. So I'll put the motions. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against? Motions are carried. Thank you. So very well presented in terms of the document. So thank you so much. That and we do appreciate that it's a lot of work. So please extend our appreciation to all the teams of people who put all that together. And yeah, the visuals I found really interesting and informative. So thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
So moving on to item number 7, Tina presenting. Yeah.
Kia ora koutou. Thank you, Madam Chair. And hello, councillors. So the annual floodplain management plan implementation report normally follows Georgia's asset condition reporting. The report is for the last financial year and is a summary of, in effect, all of the other reports that were put forward to the Environment Committee over the year. So I am happy to take the report as read and answer any questions or refer to others to answer questions if I can't.
Thank you very much. So do we have any questions from around the table or online? No. So read and understood. If I asked anybody, if I tested anybody, would it be good? No, I'm joking. So nobody online? Just checking. Well, we don't have any recommendations. So we all happy with that? Yeah, great. Okay. I think this is a reflection of, I feel like we're kind of getting good information, and so that is, comforting and assuring. And as I say, getting more money through the LTP is very good. Great, thank you. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
It's awkward, doesn't it? But that's a sign of a good report. Yeah, I know, yeah. So item number 8, right, Stephen and Christina.
Morena koutou. I'm Stephen Thorley, and this is Christina Cranston, who's one of our team leaders in environmental regulation. Just briefly why we're here, this is a follow-up to our charging policy review deliberations, and it was required for us to come and report back to you and provide some information on some of the streamlining initiatives that are happening in the regulatory space. So streamlining is a multi-pronged approach. We do that internally through feedback with best practice. We also give external feedback, which we mentioned in the report, through customer service surveying. So yeah, there's many aspects to it, and we've provided a couple of examples in that report for your information. Other than that, we'll take it as read and happy to take questions.
So looking around, again, anybody online who wants to ask a question? Right. Oh, Councillor Lee, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know the answer to this, but I'll ask it. In terms of councils meeting statutory timelines for consenting processes, just looking at that table, I think it's on paragraph 7. It shows that we're doing very well, but other councils are not. But there are really no consequences, are there, if a council fails to meet processing statutory timeframes?
Yes, well, there are some. Yeah, there is a consequence. There are regulations, discount regulations. If you are 1 day out of time, you have to provide a 1-day discount, and that increases to 50% for every day that you're over time.
Okay, because I think recently with the ECAN, they only processed like a quarter of their consents within their statutory timeframe. And I think the government just sent a really firmly worded signal that you're on notice. That's not a real kind of kick up the backside, is it, to get their processes?
Yeah, certainly. The discount regulation is definitely a key driver, certainly for us. And staff are often, that's one of our key things we work on with our staff, is ensuring that timeframes are met, and working with applicants around those timeframes as well. Have they got flexibility around timeframes that we can work? So it's certainly part of our ethos, but different accounts will approach it certainly in different ways.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Well, we don't have any other questions, so very much appreciated. Thank you. Thanks for coming. Then item number 9, the Whaitua update. So Nicola's taking us through that, or?
Kia ora koutou. I'd like to introduce Michaela, who's one of our new team members in Catchment and has done all the heavy lifting of coordinating the reporting and working with a lot of people across the group to provide this update. She will take all the tricky questions. We just wanted to take you through a few slides to provide an overview of where we're at, and happy to take any questions during or after. So as you're all pretty familiar, the WIP programs are the way that Greater Wellington has taken forward to address the National Policy Statement on Freshwater Management, and it involves a partnership approach. We have now delivered 4, and they've each been a bit different and changed and built on each other's lessons as they've gone. And while implementation is, of course, quite challenging because we're dealing with many complex interwoven layers around freshwater quality and land use, we are making progress against those recommendations. And this year in particular, we had new content come through from Ngāti Toa, which was fantastic, and Wellington City Council. And of course, the Plan Change 1, addressing 2 of those Whaitua reports, is underway. And we have had the Kapiti Whaitua Implementation Program report received by Council at that wonderful event. We have produced, with the support of members, circulated a karakia that is produced in 3 different languages, the official languages of New Zealand, Aotearoa, and we have got quite a lot of work ahead of us to look into the feasibility like with all the WIP programs, the recommendations are not researched fully before they are agreed and put forward, and that feasibility work is still to come. Small size font, but the content is in your report as well. And overall what it shows is we're making a small improvement, and that's to be expected given the long timeframes that these programs operate in, but there are small improvements happening. What we're trying to do is balance how we tell you stories at places that integrate these recommendations and the intent of our whaitua committees and mana whenua direction to us through stories, as well as providing transparency on where we're going with the individual recommendations. For anyone who read them carefully, you'll see there are still some gaps, but they are reducing, and we're going to focus a bit harder on those gaps in the next 6 months, including tweaking how we describe the categories so that it's a bit more intuitive when you read them. As I said, that there's real challenges in making this real and achieving all the recommendations in our lifetimes, but we're continuing to chip away at it, and hopefully these reports will deliver that reassurance. The next steps are sharing the reports. So they get published on our website. We share them proactively with former committee members and other people who are interested. Like I said, we're going to try and make it a bit more intuitive so you can actually see where it's at. We're working on 6 monthly reporting, so the next one will be June next year, and we'll keep chasing up agencies to provide the input because it is a shared implementation program. And we're going to keep trying to balance the how do we show you what difference it's making against tracking those recommendations that people put so much effort into. So that's a summary of the report with its long appendices, and welcome any feedback or questions.
Great, thank you. Any questions from the table or from online? I have a question for myself to the committee is there any tweaking that you would like to see that might help in terms of the information you've received in the report? And, don't consider this the only opportunity if on reflection, if you have reflections you want to put back to Nicola, please do, because we want to make it, given that it's only every 6 months, that, as useful as possible. Any thoughts? Yeah. I just want to, Councillor Connolly.
Thanks. Thank you for this report. Like, it's obvious the massive amount of work and time and thought that went into it, and I love the photos, which makes it all a little bit more real and a bit easier to digest as part of 344 pages of stuff to get through. You said things are improving, and I assume that was based on the number of implemented or partially implemented recommendations. I guess we've talked in this committee before about actually measuring whether things in the environment in the tie-out are improving. And I'm looking across at Dave for the data kind of to back that up, and some actual measures of freshwater health that I don't know whether, just a more general question or reflection. Should we be reporting that more generally, either part of the Whaitua report or as more generally a kind of state of the environment report that we receive maybe every 3 years, that actually gives us a handle on, whether despite all our work things are improving or in fact not improving. And obviously there are a lot of factors that are not within our realm of control, but ultimately that's why we're doing it. And I guess I don't have a handle from this report on whether things are actually improving.
Yeah, no, that that's the key question, really, isn't it? And for me, if you want to give us any guidance now, I would welcome it. Tracking all the recommendations is a tricky balance of effort for return because it takes quite a lot of energy, and we're also trying to implement those recommendations into the way we do our work forward. That I think it's really important that we maintain the right level of transparency there, but for the return on effort, that takes us away from looking at how do we better tell stories that integrate where it is shifting, where there are little gems of improvement, but providing really honest feedback about how the overall intent is going and managing that in a fair timeframe expectation, because obviously these things take a long time to shift, and the result of how management influences water condition, for example, may have lags in it as well. So if there is feedback from this committee that we should still keep doing recommendation by recommendation, I like that for transparency, and we need to do that anyway. But if you want us to start moving away from that level of detail, it frees us up a bit. So I'm looking for a bit of guidance there. And I've been telling you we're shifting, and we are, but I'm just not sure when the right time is to shift more actively away from the detail.
Cool. Can I just, while people are reflecting on that, David, I think, did you want to say something?
Yeah, just quickly, I think, thanks, Nick, via the chair. The other part of the answer to your question is as we start looking at the long-term outcomes as part of the overall environment group strategy, you'll start to get some of those indicators around the general health and the improvement of it. How we tie that back to the phytos and the catchment reports is still to be developed. But I think the key question you're asking there is what's the overall outcome we're achieving? And you can expect to start seeing some measures and metrics as we determine the evaluation path for our overall strategy. Does that help a bit?
Yeah, and I also feel like possibly it's a little bit our fault. Like I feel like the organisation has a lot of information and you have it in various databases, and we need to access that. But also, you know, the effort to do that means that it could be presented possibly in a more accessible way, and a way that the community can access it better as well. So I think it's probably onus on both of us to start stepping up with that wealth of information that we have.
Yeah, I think that's a really valid point, Councillor, and I think that that's something that we can definitely bring to environment committees on a sort of a regular basis. When I mean regular, maybe annually or something like that. And it's something we have discussed with you before, like state of the environment information and those kind of things. So, you know, you hear all about the details of our work, but actually sort of going up a level and going, actually, how are things tracking in terms of those outcomes? So that's something we'll take away from today.
Councillor Kirkman and then Barbie.
Thank you. I know with the Whaitua and Pororua, we're being delayed just with the work that's been done with Ngāti Toa and Pororua City Council, although they're optimistic that early next year we'll have a bit more collusion there. But what's happening on the Horakiri stream is through Battle Hill, where there was an issue, we acted quickly to improve things. But when Horakiri stream comes through private farmland and approaches Grays Road, what's happening there is the soil is being washed down along with trees into the river there, and the farmers aren't doing anything about it because they can't afford, firstly, to go through the process, and secondly, because it's quite difficult for them to find a solution that works. And so they ring me up when there's floods, and I end up going back to Pororua City Council to get them to clear out trees at the bridge. But then further down the stream, another 100 metres further on Te Arapico walkway, it's washing out the walkway there. And so I had a complaint yesterday that it's dangerous through there. I believe this is Pororua City Council work, but the question for me is that we need to find a pragmatic way of working with these streams, with Ngāti Toa, because some of the issues are saying, well, we'll let the stream follow its own course. It's not realistic. It's not protecting the inlet. It's increasing the levels of silt, and you only need an overhead view of that river where it goes under Grays Road to see the all the silk that's coming down there. And of course, the last thing that happens there is because of our, when it's about to wash the road out, then we go in with the Porirua City Council and we're given consent to put concrete blocks in the river, which is not really in keeping with what we should do, which is just a temporary fix. And so I think we've got to find a pragmatic way in working with Maori interests and within our environmental interests and with the farmers there. And so you asked for suggestions, and I'd really like to be involved and help in some way there because it's not working at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I think I'm not sure if Jimmy can jump online to make sure I answer this part correctly, but we do have some really tangible, practical improvement happening with agreement between Greater Wellington and Porirua City Council. I see Jimmy's there. Can you just speak briefly to that riparian planting cooperation agreement? And then, Councillor, we can follow up separately on any specifics on that topic.
Yeah, kia ora tatou. Yeah, we have been working or trying to collaborate more with Porirua City in terms of our land management approach with Dave Boone's team. So we have for 25 and 26 agreed to do a combined program that's going to enable us to offer landowners higher incentive rate to retire land. So that, I think that's one step in the right direction. We can use that as a bit of a pilot to see how well that goes. Particularly with the changes we have coming down the line through PC1. So there's no quick fixes to some of those streams in the lower catchment, but as we begin to work and do that stuff in the upper catchment and look to prioritise stuff through Porirua to that high erosion prone land in the upper catchment, I think we'll start to see some wins. But yeah, they won't happen quickly, I guess is the answer. But we have got a good, I guess, partnership formed up for the next 2 years while their riparian program that they have through MFE runs its course. Yeah.
So Barbie and then Councillor Nash.
No, thank you. Very comprehensive report. Just wanting to follow on with Ros's comments. The Wairarapa Catchment Collective, of which I think I'm the honorary secretary of, is I think going to be a really good model going forward, and it's talked about in here, but providing with data, because with our linkages up with Mountains to Sea, who do an extensive amount of water testing in those regions, we're covering really big hectarages because we've got the combined, we're not reliant on individual landowners, we've got groups that are covering really big areas and big stretches of waterways. So I think that's going to be the linkages that you guys have got here with council is really positive in that space. And I think if we can channel more money into the water testing and the eDNA testing that we're doing in some of the catchments, I think you'll see some outcomes. I don't know how much they align across in other regions. I can only speak for the Wairarapa in that space.
Yeah, just picking up on Councillor Connolly's point about how to present the recommendations and the outcomes and so on. I guess I'm thinking some of the recommendations are going to have more of an impact on the outcomes. Like, because there's a million recommendations and some of them are around the edges, right? Some of them are going to have a big impact. And so if what we're concerned about, which I think we are, is the outcomes, i.e. healthier streams, species recovery, more biodiversity, etc., then maybe you could find the key recommendations in amongst the millions of recommendations in the photo implementation plans that have the biggest impact on those outcomes, and then focus your reporting on them, because then we can see a slightly less bureaucratic report about recommendations while still being anchored in the recommendations, but more of a focus on, do we have more fish, do we have more beetles and bugs, and do we have healthier streams? Thanks.
Okay, that's all good. Thank you so much. So we'll conclude that, and then we'll do our last item. So I think we'll wrap, and then we can wrap the meeting up, morning tea, and then clean slate for our workshops. So, Leanne, item number 10.
Yes, kia ora. I just want to acknowledge all of my group's work because this is the last update of 2024. But as you can see, huge amounts of work goes on every day. We'll take the report as read, and we're really happy to take any comments or questions.
Councillor Nash.
Yep. Oh, thanks very much for the report. And just paragraph 88 is very exciting about the project Rata. So I just wondered whether we could hear a little bit more. I mean, not a huge amount, but just a little bit more about that. Because I know there's been quite a lot of work towards that project with the landscape scale, 1080 drops, and now it looks like there's going to be a focused effort around there that'll happen on an ongoing basis. So, yeah, maybe what can we expect, and tell me a bit more about that.
So this is about the mainland island, sorry?
This is about the Akatarawa forest, which last term a number of us worked quite a lot on. Well, there was a lot of community interest, let's say, around the big ancient rata that are, I think the biggest rata in the world that are in there, and they were getting eaten by possums, and so we did manage to get a big 1080 drop done that kind of beat the population back, and then we've been. I think this looks like the sort of culmination of a lot of efforts and concern around getting that. But I mean, if we're not able to talk about it more now, that's fine. It was I'm just more happy to see that something sort of focused and sustained is going to happen to protect those very precious trees.
Yeah, no, sorry. I was just, if there was something more specific in the question there, but yes, definitely we are looking to do more work in there and to protect those trees. So I can confirm that.
Excellent. So any more questions? Anybody online? Oh, sorry, Barbie.
Yeah, I just had two questions here. Was one on item 12, officers are making presentations on the change to a number of groups, which includes Farmer Reference Group. I'm unaware of what that all means, so I would probably appreciate being brought into the loop with what that statement means. And on 22 was just wondering whether we've still got how many of our landowners, which are predominantly in the Wairarapa, that are still moving in the non-compliance around the dam regulations.
In terms of number 12, I think that's referring to, we've been presenting to numerous different committees and groups around the changes to the regional policy statement. So it's just a comment that we've been engaging with various different committees and groups around what those RPS changes will mean for people. I think that's what 12 is.
Okay, thanks. Sorry.
And then, sorry, what was the
other one was just around where we're sitting with non-compliant people with dams, and I know most of them in private ownership are in the Wairarapa, as to whether there's we're just a state of the play with that and where it's at.
Okay, sure.
And
very, very quickly on that one, we're following up. Basically, we're trying to get in contact with them to follow up to make sure they're aware of their responsibilities. We're taking, if you go the 4 E's, we're not taking a hardline enforcement approach. We're taking a more education engagement approach at the moment, but we're trying to get them into compliance.
And you're getting a reasonably good reception?
I can check with the team, but at the moment,
get in touch with me if you need any kind of liaison help in that space.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Awesome. So no other questions. Councillor Connell.
It's very loud. I just wanted to raise my perennial issue around signage. Particularly, when this issue first came up, I was unhappy with the name change of the Akatarawa Forest to Akatarawa Regional Park because the name Akatarawa and whether that was the correct spelling had been raised as part of the whaitua. And I just, although there's quite a lot of commentary between 43 and sort of 48 on the subject, it doesn't actually clarify whether we're any closer to getting an agreed name for Akatarawa. But there were other parks that, we were just looking to get some guidance on the spelling and the name, and I'm just in total not quite sure how that project's all going, despite the commentary.
So I think David Boone's online. If you beam in, please help.
Yeah, I'll follow up with that directly with Councillor Connolly. I think we've covered this one a number of times, and obviously we're not understanding the question and not providing the answer that you're seeking. So I'll follow up with you offline.
That would be good, thanks. Cool. Okay, so we'll conclude that item. So we'll conclude our meeting for the morning, and then we'll have morning tea and see us back here at say 11:20, because we've got an hour and a half, but we'll have to make it an hour and 20 workshop. So just want to say thank you very much to everybody who's contributed to the reports today. Quality, thank you. Quality comes to mind. And just again, how lovely it was to see the doing, the mahi of our young ones, and that was a challenge to us all, really, isn't it? Thank you. So I just want to close with karakia. Kia hora tina reno, kia whakapapa punamu timoana. He huria mā tātou I te rangi nei, araha atu, araha mai, tātou I a tātou katoa. Hui e, tai ki e. Thank you very much. So